The endless quiet of space was the only thing outside the windows of the KSV Mujigi. Inside the ship, the air hummed softly with the sound of machines. Captain Lee Hanul looked at the reports on her screen. They were surveys of a small, mineral-rich asteroid field. It was quiet work. The kind of work that let you forget you were very, very far from home. She was a woman with a calm face. Her black hair was tied back simply. Before this mission, she had worked for many years at the Korean Aerospace Research Institute. She knew how to navigate the big, empty places between stars. Right now, she was thinking about coffee and about finishing her shift. In the pilot's chair, Kim Tae-hyun was also thinking about home. On his private screen was a picture. It showed his wife, Ji-eun, holding their baby son, Junsu. They lived on Mars Colony 3. The baby was only 4 months old. Tae-hyun's job was to fly the ship through tricky places, like asteroid fields. He was very good at it. He missed the noise of his son, the feeling of his small hand. The silence of the ship was very different. Engineer Park Min-ji was in the lower deck. She was checking the power flow to the sublight engines. She had just finished a standard test. The engines were good, but they were cooling down. It would take almost a minute to get them to full power again. She wiped her hands on her pants. Min-ji liked things that worked. She liked her crew. They felt like family out here, where there was nothing else. Diplomat Choi Soo-young was at the communications station. She was listening to the general frequency. It was almost always silent. For years, her job had been to talk to new life forms, if they ever found any. She had many speeches and messages of peace ready, but she had never used them. Only silence answered. Sometimes, she felt she was just talking to the dark. This was a normal day, a boring day. This was what they all wanted. Then, everything changed. Space in front of the Mujigi tore open. It was not a slow process. It was violent and sudden. A rip of bright, painful light appeared from nothing. Then, a ship pushed its way into reality. It was massive, 3 times the size of the Mujigi. It was shaped like a dark, sharp wedge. It looked like a weapon, not a ship for exploring. Its surface was black and seemed to drink the light from the stars. On its front, parts of the ship began to glow with a dangerous blue light. Weapons. They were powering up immediately. On the Mujigi, alarms screamed to life. Red lights flashed. Hanul was on her feet. Report. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the noise. Tae-hyun's hands flew over his controls. Unknown vessel. It just appeared. No transit signature. No hail. Its energy signature is massive. Military grade. Minji's voice came from below, tense. Our sublight engines are at 20%. They're spooling from the diagnostic. Full power in 45 seconds. Shields are at basic strength only. Soo-young was already working. I am sending standard first contact greetings. Human affiliation. Peaceful intent. Before she could finish, the main screen changed. An image appeared. It was not a face. It looked like a smooth, metal mask. When it spoke, the voice was not one voice but many. They spoke as one, flat and without feeling. It was like listening to a machine made of 100 people. Unidentified vessel. The voice said. The words were in perfect, unaccented Korean, which was more frightening than if they had not understood. You have trespassed into Dominion sacrosanct space. You have 20 of your seconds to disengage propulsion and yield for boarding. A clock appeared on their main screen. The numbers were big and red. 20. What is Dominion sacrosanct space? Hanul said quickly to Soo-young. We are in mapped neutral territory. 19. Soo-young was speaking into her microphone, her voice calm but urgent. Alien vessel, this is the KSV Mujigi. We are a human science survey ship. We mean no trespass. Our maps show this as neutral space. Please, identify your dominion. We wish to talk. 18. There was no answer. Only the silent countdown. 17. Tae-hyun looked at his scanner. Their weapons are charged and targeted. On us. They are not scanning us. They are locked on. 16. Min-ji shouted up from engineering. I am trying to rush the engine cycle. We cannot fight that. Our shields will stop one, maybe two shots from a secondary weapon. Their main cannon will cut us in half. 15. Hanul kept her eyes on the screen. Diplomat Choi, send everything. Our mission logs, our crew registry, the first contact protocols. 14. Soo-young sent the data. The files that said who they were, what they were doing here. The peaceful words. 13. The voice returned. It did not react to the data. It just repeated the command. Unchanged. Yield for boarding. Non-compliance is annihilation. 12. The word annihilation hung in the air. It was a clean, cold word. It meant being erased. 11. Taehyun looked from his family photo to the huge, dark ship. His pilot's mind saw its shape. The big gun on its top. The strong armor. Its weak spot near the bottom where ships might enter. A hangar bay door. A seam in the armor. 10. Captain, Soo-young said, her professional calm breaking. They are not listening. This is not a first contact. This is an order to kneel and die. 9. Hanul saw it too. The ship had not moved. It had not answered. It had only given a command and started a clock. It was not here to talk. It was here to remove a problem. 8. All power to the engines, Minji. Now, Hanul said, her voice low. 7. I'm trying. It's not ready. Minji yelled back, the strain clear. 6. On the screen, the alien ship waited. Perfect. Silent. Unmoving. It was a wall. And they were going to hit it. 5. Hanul looked at Taehyun. She saw the understanding in his eyes. The same understanding she had. There were no good choices left. Only terrible ones. For Taehyun's hands rested on the flight controls. He gave a small, almost invisible nod. 3. The silence on their ship was louder than the alarms. It was the silence of 4 people realizing what came next. 2. Captain Lee Hanul took a slow breath. She looked at her crew. Then she looked back at the screen at the final ticking number. 1. Yield. The alien voice commanded one last time. The clock hit 0. The alien ship's main cannon flared with a bright, blinding blue light. It was going to fire. 0. The number burned on the screen. For a single heartbeat, nothing happened. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, the air on the Mujigi filled with a new, piercing sound. It was a high-pitched whine from their own ship. A targeting alarm. The Vekthel dreadnought had a direct weapons lock. The blue glow from its main cannon was now a fierce, burning star. It was about to fire. Evasive, Captain Hanul shouted. Pilot Kim Taehyun did not need the order. His hands were already moving. He slammed the control stick to the side and pushed the weak thrusters to their maximum. The Mujigi jerked violently to the port side. It was a clumsy, desperate move. A beam of solid blue energy, thicker than their ship, ripped through the space where they had just been floating. It missed them by less than 300 meters. In space, that was a hair's width. The light from the beam filled their windows, painting everyone's face in cold, ghostly blue. Engine status. Hanul yelled, gripping her chair to stay upright. Minji's voice was a strange shout from below. 40 seconds to full power. We are a sitting duck. Shields are holding, but they are only for microdebris. One direct hit will kill us. Another alarm sounded. The dreadnought was turning. Its smaller, secondary weapons began to glow. It was tracking them. They are not stopping, Soo-young said, her eyes wide on her monitor. She was still sending the peace protocols. She sent them again and again. They are not even acknowledging our signals. It's like we are shouting at a wall. A wall that is trying to kill us, Taehyun muttered, his jaw tight. He pulled the ship into a rolling spin, trying to make them a harder target. 2 more beams shot from the alien ship. These were smaller but faster. One burned past their front window. The other grazed their starboard side. A shudder went through the Mujigi. The lights flickered. A shower of sparks erupted from a panel behind Soo-young. She flinched away. Hull breach on level 2. Minor. Automatic seals are in place. Minji reported, her voice tight with focus. That was a glancing hit from a secondary weapon. The main cannon is recharging. We will not survive the next shot from that. Hanul's mind raced. They could not run. They could not hide. They could not talk. The alien ship was a predator, and it had decided they were prey. The concept of yielding was clearly not about surrender for capture. It was about making their execution easier for the executioner. "Captain," Su-young said, turning from her station. Her face was pale. "I have analyzed their communication. It is a pure digital signal. There is no room for negotiation in its structure. It is a command line. Do this, or be deleted. There is no other option in their language. So we are just a software error to them," Hanul said softly, watching the massive ship begin its turn to bring the main cannon to bear again. Its movement was slow, but terribly sure. "We have 30 seconds of engine spool left," Minji called out. Another pair of secondary beams lanced out. Taehyun was ready. He cut their thrust and let the ship drift down, then fired the maneuvering jets to push them up. One beam missed. The second connected with their rear section. The impact was like being hit by a giant hammer. The sound was a deep, metallic crunch. Everyone was thrown forward in their seats. Emergency lights flashed on, bathing the bridge in a dim red glow. The main lights went out. "Damage report." Hanul coughed. The air filled with the smell of smoke and burnt wiring. Minji's voice was shaky but clear. "Primary thruster array is damaged. We have lost maneuvering control on the port side. I can give you forward thrust in 20 seconds, but no sharp turns. Life support is stable. Hull integrity is at 80%. They have disabled us," Taehyun said, staring at his controls. His screens showed the failure. They could move forward, mostly. They could not run away. It was over. On the main viewer, the Vekthal dreadnought completed its turn. Its massive front was now perfectly aligned with them. The glowing mouth of the main cannon looked like a dead eye staring right at them. It began to gather energy again, a low hum they could feel in their bones. They were helpless. The alien ship had taken away their ability to flee. Now it would take their lives. Su-young stopped transmitting. She looked at her hands, then at her crewmates. The hope had left her eyes. "They were never going to board us," she whispered. "Weren't they? Yield for boarding." It was a lie, or a translation error. "We yield, they destroy us cleanly. We don't yield, they destroy us anyway." There was only ever one end. Hanul heard her. She looked at Taehyun. He was not looking at his instruments anymore. He was looking at the alien ship itself. His eyes were moving over its shape, studying it like he had studied asteroids. "What do you see, pilot?" Hanul asked. Her voice was quiet in the red-lit bridge. Taehyun didn't answer right away. He zoomed the external camera on the lower part of the dreadnought. "They are powerful. Their armor is thick up front and on top. They expect a fight from someone who can fight back. They expect you to shoot at their strong parts." He pointed a finger at the screen, tracing a line near the bottom of the dark wedge. "But there. See the pattern? That's a bay door, a hangar for smaller ships. There's a weak point, a seam in their armor. It has to open. It can't be as strong as the rest." Minji's voice came up, having heard him. "Even a weak point on that ship has shields. Our little ship weapons could not scratch it." "I'm not talking about our weapons," Taehyun said. His voice was strange. It was empty of fear now. It was full of a simple, awful calculation. The hum from the alien's main cannon grew louder. It was almost ready to fire. This time they could not dodge. Hanul followed Taehyun's gaze. She saw the hangar door. She saw the massive, unstoppable ship. And she saw their own broken vessel, with just enough power to move forward in a straight line. She understood. The choice was not between life and death. That choice had been taken from them. The choice was between dying for nothing or dying for something. The choice was between a clean deletion or leaving a mark. She looked at each of her crew. Minji, waiting for an order. Su-young, whose words had finally failed. Taehyun, who had already found their final course. The hum reached its peak. The alien cannon was charged. Captain Lee Hanul straightened in her chair. Engineer Park, on my mark, give me every bit of forward thrust we have. The hum from the alien weapon filled the bridge. It was a sound you felt in your teeth. The blue light from the main cannon was so bright it washed out the stars. This was the last moment, the final second before the end. Captain Hanul's voice cut through the noise. It was calm. It was a command. Engineer Park, on my mark, give me every bit of forward thrust we have. There was a beat of silence. Minji, down in engineering, heard the words. She understood what they meant. Forward thrust. Not away. Forward. Toward the giant ship. A cold feeling spread through her chest, but it was followed by a strange calm. She put her hands on the controls. Acknowledged. Ready on your mark, Captain. Diplomat Su Young looked from Hanul to the screen, her eyes wide. Captain? Forward? Our communications. I can still try. They do not hear you, Su Young, Hanul said, not unkindly. They see a problem. We will show them we are not a problem they can simply erase. We will be a mistake they remember. She turned to the pilot. Taehyun, plot a collision course. Target the ventral seam. The hangar door. Kim Taehyun did not hesitate. His hands moved over the navigation console. His mind was clear. This was a final calculation. A last perfect maneuver. He fed in the numbers. The Mujigi's damaged computer processed the command. A new course line appeared on the main screen. A short, red arc that began at their ship and ended inside the belly of the Vekthel dreadnought. Course laid in, he said, his voice flat. Impact in 18 seconds at full thrust. Su Young stared at the red line. Her life's work was communication. Building bridges. Finding common ground. This was the opposite. This was building a tomb. This is not first contact, she whispered more to herself. This is last contact. It is the only contact they have chosen to understand, Hanul replied. She looked at her crew. We do not choose this fight, but we can choose our answer. Our answer is no. On the screen, the energy around the alien's main cannon pulsed, ready to release. Minji. Mark, Hanul said. In engineering, Minji slammed the power relays home. She bypassed every safety protocol. She poured all the energy from the ship's core, from life support, from everything but basic cockpit power, into the damaged main thruster. The Mujigi shuddered. Then it leapt forward. It was not a fast, graceful movement. It was a lurch, a wounded animal finding one last burst of strength. They moved straight ahead, directly toward the massive alien ship. On the Vekthel dreadnought, this action made no sense. The predictive algorithms of the commandant analyzed the human vessel's movement. It was not retreating. It was not firing pathetic weapons. It was accelerating on a trajectory that would lead to its own destruction. The logic circuits hesitated. This was not a recognized combat pattern. For 2 full seconds, the order to fire the main cannon was put on hold, awaiting new analysis. Those 2 seconds were a gift. The Mujigi covered half the distance. The alien ship, huge and imposing, now filled the entire front window. It was a dark mountain growing larger every moment. They're firing secondaries, Taehyun called out. His hands were tight on the stick, making tiny adjustments to keep them aimed true. He was not flying to avoid now. He was flying to hit. Brilliant lances of blue light shot from the sides of the dreadnought. They were trying to swat the irritating thing out of space before it reached them. One beam missed. Another scorched along the top of the Mujigi, tearing away communication antennas and sensors. The ship rattled violently. Direct hit to upper hull. Minor breach. Sealed. Minji's voice was loud in the calm. She was fighting her own battle below, keeping the engine from tearing itself apart. Su Young unstrapped herself from her chair. She floated to her console, her movements determined. If this is our last message, let it be a true one. Her fingers flew. She compiled a data packet. It was not a plea for peace. It was a record. She included their mission logs, their star charts, their personal files. At the last second, she opened the crew's personal folders. She saw Taehyun's family photo. She included it. She included a piece of music from Minji's file, a soft folk song. She included Hanul's personal log, which spoke of missing the rain on Earth. She set it to transmit on a loop on every frequency, aimed directly at the alien ship. "Message away," she said, strapping back in. "They will know who we were." The dreadnought was trying to move. It was so massive, it turned slowly, like a great whale. It began to tilt, to try and present its stronger armored top toward them. The hangar door, their target, started to move slightly out of alignment. "They see it," Hanul said. "Correct course, Taehyun." "Correcting," Taehyun said. He fired the lateral thrusters on their starboard side. The ship groaned in protest, but it shifted, keeping the red targeting circle fixed on the dark line of the hangar bay door. The alien ship was now terrifyingly close. They could see the details of its black hull, the patterns that were not decorations but weapons and sensors. 5 seconds to impact. Another secondary beam struck them. This one hit the rear port side, near the engine. A massive explosion of light and noise filled the ship. The main lights died completely. Only the flashing red emergency lights remained. The sound of screaming metal was everywhere. "We've lost primary power. Engine is failing," Minji yelled. "We are on momentum now." It didn't matter. They were a bullet. Bullets do not need engines at the end. 3 seconds. The bridge was filled with a strange quiet. The alarms seemed distant. The only sound was the ragged breathing of the crew and the deep, angry hum of the alien ship that now blocked out the universe. Hanul looked at her crew. "It has been an honor." Su-young closed her eyes, thinking of green hills. Minji, in the dark below, put her hand on the ship's cold frame and thought of her friends back home. Taehyun's eyes were fixed on the target. His hand rested lightly on the controls, making a final, tiny adjustment. He did not think of the end. He thought only of the course, of hitting the mark. In the corner of his eye, the picture of his wife and son was still lit on his private screen. 2 seconds. The Vekthal commandant, finally resolving the human action as a primitive ramming tactic, authorized full defensive measures. Point defense guns emerged from the dreadnought's hull, spitting rapid fire. Small projectiles began to pepper the Mujigi, punching small holes in its already broken body. 1 second. The hangar door was right in front of them. A vast, dark mouth. Taehyun tilted the nose of the Mujigi down just a degree. He aimed not for the door itself, but for the reinforced edge where the door met the ship's hull. The seam. 0. The KSV Mujigi, a small ship of exploration, met the Vekthal dreadnought, a giant of war. There was no fiery explosion in the silence of space. There was a terrible physical reality. A deep, shuddering crunch transmitted through the metal of both ships. The sound of compaction, of tearing, of structures failing forever. The Mujigi died instantly, its front half collapsing into a spear of shattered metal that plowed deep into the soft underbelly of the giant. For a moment, the two ships were one. The world ended in noise and violence. The sound of tearing metal was not a single sound, but 100 different screams. On the bridge of the Mujigi, the force of the impact threw everything forward. The main window, made of super-strong material, did not shatter. It instead filled with a sudden, blinding spiderweb of cracks. Then it went completely dark, pressed against the broken hull of the alien ship. The alarms died instantly. The power was gone. The only light came from a few small, battery-powered emergency strips on the floor. They glowed a weak, ghostly blue. Kim Taehyun felt a sharp pain in his chest where the straps of his chair cut into him. His head rang. He tried to breathe, and the air was thick with dust and the bitter smell of burnt circuits. He blinked, trying to see. His console was dead. All his screens were black. For a strange, quiet moment, he thought he was dead. Then he heard a groan. It was Su-young. He turned his head. In the dim light, he could see the diplomat slumped in her chair. She was moving, trying to push herself upright. "Is everyone?" she started, her voice a rough whisper. She coughed. "I am here." Captain Hanul's voice came from the left. It was steady but tight with pain. "Status. Report. The bridge is intact. Taehyun said, looking around. The structure around them had held. But the ship was dead. No power. Life support is gone. We are on reserve oxygen. From the speaker in the ceiling, Minji's voice crackled. It was filled with static and pain. Engineering is a mess. Captain, can you hear me? We hear you, Minji, Hanul said, pulling herself out of her chair. She floated in the zero gravity that had taken over. Are you hurt? My leg, it's pinned. Something fell. But I'm okay. There was a pause, then a sound of effort. The ship is gone, Captain. The front half is folded up like paper. We are stuck in them. We are inside the hole we made. They were alive. They were trapped inside the wreck of their ship, which was now jammed into the side of the alien warship. Taehyun unstrapped and pushed off his chair. He floated to the cracked front window. He could see nothing but blackness and twisted metal pressed against it. They were buried. He felt a cold feeling that was not from the air. They had done the impossible. They had hit the giant. And now they were stuck in the wound. What happens now? Soo-young asked softly, her voice full of a new kind of fear. The fear that comes after the big action is over, and you are still there to face what comes next. Hanul had no answer. They had chosen to leave a mark. They had not planned on surviving the mark. Then, a new noise started. It was a low, rhythmic thump. 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 It came through the metal of the hull, vibrating through their chairs and into their bones. It was a sound of pressure, of movement. What is that? Soo-young whispered. They are trying to get to us. Minji's voice came through grim. From their side. They are cutting through the wreckage. They are coming to board what's left. A different fear took hold. The fear of the executioner whose clean job had been messed up. The fear of the giant, now wounded and angry. Hanul pushed off towards the bridge door. It was sealed shut, its automatic systems dead. She pulled a manual release lever. With a hard clunk, the door slid open a few inches, then stopped, jammed by the twisted frame of the ship. The corridor beyond was dark and full of floating debris. We cannot stay here, Hanul said. If they board, they will find us here. A trophy. Where can we go? Taehyun asked. The ship is destroyed. Their ship, Hanul said, looking towards the source of the pounding thumps. We are in it. Part of our wreck is inside their hull. We go deeper. Into their ship. The idea was insane. To crawl out of their broken home and into the belly of the enemy. The thump, thump, thump grew louder. More urgent. Minji, can you move? Hanul asked. I can try. Give me a moment. They heard grunts and the screech of metal from the comms. We will come to you, Hanul said. Taehyun, Soo-young with me. We get Minji. Then we find a way out of our hull and into theirs. They moved through the dark corridors of the Majigi. It was a nightmare world. Emergency lights showed glimpses of destruction. Walls were bent in. Wires hung like vines. Small, frozen globes of water and coolant floated in the air. They passed a hole in the side of the corridor where the metal was torn inward, showing the strange, dark alloy of the Vekthel ship just beyond. The two metals were pressed together in a deadly kiss. They reached engineering. The door was open, but the room was a cave of shadows and sharp edges. Minji was there, trapped under a fallen support beam. Her face was pale, but she managed a weak smile when she saw their lights. Together, Taehyun and Hanul pushed and pulled the heavy beam. It moved slowly. Soo-young held Minji's hand, talking to her softly. Finally, with a loud scrape, the beam shifted enough for Minji to pull her leg free. She cried out in pain. It's not broken, I think, she gasped. Badly bruised. Maybe sprained. Hanul helped her up. Minji put an arm around the captain's shoulders, unable to put weight on her leg. The pounding was very close now. It sounded like it was just on the other side of the engineering bulkhead. There, Taehyun said, pointing his light. On the far side of engineering, the collision had torn a jagged opening. It was not into space, but into a dark, smooth-walled tunnel. It was the edge of the hole they had made in the alien hangar bay. Their ship's metal ended in a ripped edge. Beyond was the interior of the dreadnought. They had a choice: stay and be found by the boarding party, or go into the dark of the enemy ship. No one spoke. They all knew the choice was no choice at all. Hanul went first, climbing carefully through the jagged hole. Taehyun helped Minji through, and Sooyoung followed last. They stood in a vast, dark space. It was the hangar bay, or what was left of it. The Mujigi had plowed through it like a fist through a glass window. The smooth, polished floors were buckled. Strange, sleek alien shuttles were crushed and thrown against the walls. The air was thin and cold, but breathable. Distant, flashing amber lights lit the cavernous space in pulses. And there, not 50 meters away, was a glowing, circular door. It was cutting its way through a pile of wreckage. Sparks flew. It was the boarding party, cutting through from the other side of the hangar to reach the human ship. The door fell inward with a crash. Through the opening they saw figures. Tall, armored shapes with bulbous heads and multi-lensed eyes. They carried long, sinister-looking tools that were clearly weapons. One of them pointed directly at the hole the humans had just climbed out of. Hanul pulled Minji behind a piece of twisted metal from a crushed shuttle. Taehyun and Sooyoung ducked down beside them. They were in the open, in the enemy's house. The alien soldiers moved with a quick, efficient grace. They began to fan out, heading straight for the wreck of the Mujigi. The humans were inside the beast, and the beast was now awake and searching for them. The alien soldiers moved without a sound. Their boots made no noise on the broken floor. Only the faint hum of their armor and weapons broke the quiet. Their heads swiveled, lenses in their helmets glowing with soft green light as they scanned the ruined hangar. Hidden behind the wrecked shuttle, the four humans held their breath. Minji bit down on her lip to stop a whimper of pain from her leg. Sooyoung's eyes were wide, fixed on the approaching figures. Taehyun's hand found a broken piece of piping on the floor. It was a poor weapon, but it was something. Captain Hanul watched the soldiers. There were 5 of them. They moved in a pattern, covering each other. They were not rushing. They were methodical, professionals cleaning up a mess. Their focus was on the torn-open hole leading into the Mujigi. They were going to search their ship. One of the soldiers raised a hand, pointed 2 fingers at the hole, then gestured to 2 others. The 2 soldiers detached from the group and moved forward, weapons raised, to enter the human wreck. This was their only chance. While the group was split, Hanul leaned close to her crew, her voice the faintest whisper. "We go now, to that far doorway." She nodded to a dark archway on the opposite side of the hangar, away from the boarding party. It was an opening that led deeper into the ship. "Stay low. Move with the flashing lights." The amber emergency lights flashed every few seconds, plunging the vast space into darkness for a heartbeat at a time. They waited. A light flashed. Darkness. In that moment of dark, Hanul moved. She pulled Minji with her, half carrying her. They scurried behind a low, crumpled cart. The next flash of light found them hidden. Taehyun tapped Sooyoung's shoulder. Another flash. Darkness. They moved, ducking behind a fallen support column. The sounds of the aliens cutting into the Mujigi covered the small sounds of their movement. Step by step, flash by flash, they crossed the shadowy edge of the hangar. The air grew colder. The smooth, black walls seemed to absorb the light. The archway was just ahead. Then, a sharp, electronic sound echoed through the hangar. It was an alert. One of the soldiers still standing guard near the main entry point turned its head. Its lenses swept across the darkness where the humans were hiding. It had seen movement. It raised its weapon and let out a series of quick, clicking sounds. The 2 soldiers who had entered the Mujigi quickly backed out. All 5 now turned towards the archway. "Run," Hanul said, her whisper urgent. They ran. Minji hobbled, leaning heavily on Hanul. Taehyun and Sooyoung were just ahead. They reached the archway and stumbled through. It was not a door, but a short tunnel leading to a large, circular elevator platform. There were no buttons they could understand, only smooth panels. Behind them, the clicking calls of the soldiers grew closer. A beam of bright green energy sizzled past them and struck the wall, leaving a smoking scorch mark. "Down!" Taehyun yelled, pointing. The elevator platform seemed to go both up and down. He slammed his hand against the smooth wall next to a downward symbol. Nothing happened. Soo-young pushed him aside. She looked at the symbols. They were not letters but concepts. Status. Flow. Direction. Her years of studying alien communication patterns took over. She didn't understand the language, but she understood logic. She saw a symbol that looked like a stack of plates, with the bottom plate highlighted. She pressed it. With a soft hum, the platform began to sink smoothly down the shaft. They looked up. At the top of the shaft, the 5 armored soldiers appeared. They looked down. One raised its weapon. The platform dropped quickly into darkness. Another green beam shot down the shaft, missing them by inches. They descended in silence for a long time. The air grew warmer. There was a new sound here. A deep, powerful thrumming that vibrated through the metal. The sound of the ship's heart. The platform stopped. It opened into another corridor. This one was wide and brightly lit with a harsh white light. The walls pulsed with a faint blue glow along the floor. It was clean, undisturbed by the damage above. They could hear a new sound. A fast, rhythmic clanking, like metal feet on metal floors. Patrols. They were deep inside the alien warship now, in its working belly. "We cannot stay here," Minji said, her voice shaky. "They will find us. This is their home. They know every part." Hanul agreed, but they had no map, no goal. Their only plan had been to not be captured. Now they were lost. Taehyun was looking at the walls, at the glowing lines. "This is a main artery," he said. "Power conduits. Feel the vibration? That way." He pointed to the right. "The vibration is stronger. That leads to engineering. To the power core." "Why would we go there?" Soo-young asked. "Because it is important," Hanul answered, understanding. "On our ship, the most important areas have the most security, but also the most safeguards. And the most damage control." She looked at Taehyun. "If we can cause trouble there, we can be more than just rats hiding in the walls. We can still hurt them." The idea was terrifying, but it was also a purpose. They moved down the bright corridor, sticking close to the walls. The clanking sound of patrols seemed to come from everywhere. At every intersection, they stopped and peered carefully. They saw aliens, but not soldiers. These were smaller, with simpler coveralls. Technicians. They moved with their heads down, focused on tasks, carrying strange tools. The humans pressed themselves into doorways, holding their breath as the workers passed. They followed the increasing thrum of power. It led them to a massive, sealed door. It was made of a dense, bronze-colored metal. There were no handles. In the center was a large, complex symbol. "The core must be behind there," Minji said, her engineer's eye judging the door's thickness. "That is a blast door, to contain a reactor breach." As they watched, the symbol on the door glowed green. With a deep hydraulic sigh, the door began to slide open. A group of 3 technicians was coming out. Hanul acted without thinking. She stepped forward, not into the open, but into the path of the last technician as the door began to close again. The alien, its attention on a device in its hand, bumped into her. It looked up, its large, dark eyes widening in shock behind a clear faceplate. Before it could make a sound, Taehyun was there. He didn't hit it. He shoved it hard, off balance, back towards the closing door. The technician stumbled backwards with a chirp of alarm, through the narrowing gap. The heavy blast door sealed shut with a final thud, trapping the technician outside with them, and leaving the humans inside the inner sanctum. They turned. They were in the Vekthal Dreadnought's main engineering chamber. Before them, rising through multiple levels, was the ship's power core. It was not a fiery ball, but a contained column of swirling, brilliant blue energy, caged in bands of black metal. The light was beautiful and deadly. The hum was so powerful it made their bones ache. And standing at a central control platform, its back to them, was a single, tall alien. It wore no helmet. The skin was a pale gray, its head smooth. It was studying a large, floating screen of data. It was the only one in the room. It heard the noise of the scuffle and the closing door. It began to turn. The humans stood frozen, exposed in the bright, humming light of the enemy's heart. The alien turned. Its face was long, with large, dark eyes that held no white. They were like pools of deep oil. It had no hair, no eyebrows. Its expression did not change, but its posture stiffened. It saw the 4 humans, dirty and wounded, standing in its engineering core. For a long second, no one moved. The only sound was the deep, powerful hum of the energy core. Captain Hanul was the first to step forward. She kept her hands open and visible. She did not know if this being was the commander or just an engineer, but it was here and it was alone. The alien's gaze swept over them. Its eyes paused on their uniforms, on their human faces. It did not reach for a weapon. It did not call out. It simply watched. Su-young took a shaky breath. This was her moment. All her training was for this. But the words felt like dust in her mouth. What did you say to someone whose ship you had just crashed into? We did not want this, Su-young began, her voice echoing softly in the vast chamber. We tried to talk. You gave us 20 seconds. Then you fired. The alien's head tilted slightly. It spoke. The voice was not the chorus from the ship's comms. It was a single, dry, whispering voice. It came from a small device on its collar. You were an intrusion. Protocol is deletion. You did not yield. You attacked. The words were flat, without accusation. Just facts. You left us no choice, Minji said, her voice tight with pain and anger. We could not run. We could not fight your weapons. What was your choice for us? To sit and die. Yes, the alien said simply. A clean end. Efficient. Your method was inefficient, damaging, illogical. Hanul felt a cold anger rise in her. It was logical. You presented us with a fatal error. We chose a new path. The alien, who they now understood was likely the chief engineer, looked past them at the sealed blast door. It knew its technician was on the other side. It knew soldiers would be coming. But it seemed in no hurry. It was curious. Your vessel was primitive. Your power signature weak. Your collision was a statistical improbability. You targeted a structural seam. How? Taehyun spoke up. His eyes were not on the alien, but on the swirling core, studying its containment fields. You're big and strong on top. You expect a fight from in front. You look down. You think anything smaller must run or beg. You don't look up at the giants. You forget to look at your own feet. The engineer considered this. His dark eyes blinked slowly. An analogy of predation and perception. You chose to become a physical irritant, a toxin in the body. We chose to be a message, Hanul said. The message is, we are not nothing. From beyond the blast door, they heard a new sound, a heavy, rhythmic pounding, cutting tool. The soldiers had found them. The engineer heard it too. It looked at the door, then back at the humans. The message will be deleted with the messengers. The body will heal the wound. It moved its hand towards a smooth panel on the console. Taehyun moved faster. He wasn't trying to attack the engineer. He lunged for the console itself. He had seen the layout of the controls. He had spent his life understanding systems. The panel was a master status board. He didn't know the language, but he saw patterns. He saw a cascade of bright lines representing power flow. And he saw a single pulsing amber node near the top, the damaged hangar bay, the wound. The engineer let out a sharp, clicking hiss and grabbed Taehyun's arm. Taehyun struggled, but the alien was surprisingly strong. With his other hand, Taehyun slapped down hard on the console, not on a control, but on the glowing image of the ship itself, right on the amber node. He didn't know what it would do. The console responded. A series of sharp, urgent symbols flashed. A voice, the same chorus from the ship's comms, filled the room. It spoke in the alien language. The engineer released Taehyun and spun to the console, its fingers flying. The pounding on the blast door grew more frantic. What did you do? Su-young asked. I think, Taehyun said, breathing hard. I think I just marked the damaged area for emergency repair. A priority command. Minji understood first. A pained smile touched her lips. On a ship this big, emergency repair to a major hull breach. It would reroute all non-essential power. It would seal sections. To contain the damage. The engineer was working quickly, trying to cancel the command. But the ship's automated safety systems, designed to protect the hull, were now in conflict. Alarms began to sound, different from the battle alarms. These were deeper, more urgent. The pounding on the door stopped. Suddenly, the engineer paused, reading the new data on its screen. It made a low, rattling sound. It turned back to the humans. For the first time, something like emotion was in its voice. Not anger, a kind of cold frustration. You have triggered an integrity protocol. The compartment you damaged, the hangar, and all adjacent corridors are being sealed. Permanently, to preserve the main body. The soldiers sent to retrieve you are now locked out. They are on the wrong side of the emergency bulkheads. The humans stared. They had, by accident, locked their pursuers out. They had bought themselves more time in the heart of the enemy ship. But they were also now trapped in the engineering core with the chief engineer. The engineer looked at them. It seemed to be making a new calculation. These were not warriors. They were a virus that manipulated the body's own systems. It looked at the brilliant, swirling core, the most vital organ of the ship. Your persistence is illogical, it whispered. You have damaged the body. You have disrupted its functions. Yet you continue to exist inside it. You must be purged. It reached for another part of the console. This one was clearly different. It was shielded under a clear cover. A final safeguard. Hanul knew what it was. A core ejection control. Or an emergency shutdown. Or a self-destruct. Something that could wipe the infection clean, even if it cost the engineer its own life. They were out of time. Out of tricks. The engineer's hand went to lift the cover. Then Soo-young spoke. Not in Korean. Not in English. She spoke in the only universal language she had left. She pointed at the main screen, where the ship's alert still showed the data packet she had sent. The last message of the Mujigi. On the corner of the screen, small and almost forgotten, was the file she had included. The picture of Kim Tae-hyun's family. Look, Soo-young said, her voice clear and loud over the hum. Before you purge, look at what you wanted to delete. The engineer's hand hesitated. His dark eyes flicked to the screen. It saw the data, and it saw the image. A human female, a human infant, smiling. A moment of simple, fragile connection. The alien froze. It stared at the picture. The logic of war, of deletion, of efficiency did not have a file for this. It was not a weapon schematic. It was not a troop count. It was a biological and social data point of zero tactical value. But it was the reason the irritant fought, the reason the virus wanted to live. The pounding on the blast door was gone. The only sounds were the hum of the core and the soft, repeating chime of the ship's integrity alarm. The engineer stood perfectly still, its hand hovering over the final control, its eyes locked on the smiling face of a human child it would never know. Silence filled the engineering core. The deep hum of the power generator was the only sound. The chief engineer stood perfectly still. Its hand was still raised over the shielded control panel. But it did not move to lift the cover. Its large, dark eyes were fixed on the small image on the main screen. The picture of the human family. The alien's face, which showed no emotion a human could recognize, seemed to soften at the edges. It was not understanding. It was the beginning of a question. Slowly its hand lowered. It turned away from the panel and looked at the humans. It looked at Soo-young, who had shown it the picture. It looked at Tae-hyun, whose family it was. It looked at Minji, leaning in pain against a console, and at Hanul, standing tall despite everything. This data unit, the engineer's whispering voice said. It is a genetic and social motivator for your attack? Soo-young took a step forward. Her heart was pounding. It is not a motivator for attack. It is a reason for existence. It is why we do not yield. We yield, that future is deleted. We fight, we try to protect it. Even if we lose. The alien's head tilted again. It was processing. The concept was foreign. In the Vecthal Dominion, the individual was a component. A component that served the whole. A damaged component was removed for the health of the system. The idea that a component would damage the system to prove its own value was a flaw in reasoning. A sickness. But the image suggested a network of connections. A smaller system within the larger one. A system worth protecting even from the whole. The integrity alarm chimed again. The engineer's eyes flicked to a status report. The emergency bulkheads had sealed. The ship was stable but wounded. The hangar bay and several corridors were now just dead space, locked away. The human ship was a piece of shrapnel stuck in its side. Removing it would be a long, difficult operation. The humans were no longer an active threat. They were trapped in the core. They were contained. Your action was inefficient, the engineer stated again, but the cold certainty was gone from its voice. It has caused significant damage to this vessel. It has wasted resources. Your ultimatum was a lie, Hanul replied, her voice firm. You offered yield or death. There was no third option. We made a third option. The alien was silent for a long time. It looked from the humans to the core to the sealed door and back to the picture on the screen. The calculation was changing. You are contained, it said finally. You cannot leave this room. My soldiers cannot enter. You have power over nothing. We have power over this moment, Su Yung said softly. You are talking to us. You did not purge us. That is a new thing. The engineer considered this. It was true. The protocol had been clear. Delete the intrusion. It had not followed the protocol. The image, the illogical persistence, the sheer cost of their defiance. It had created data that did not fit. Your species, you do this? It asked. You choose collision over deletion? We choose not to go quietly, Minji said, her voice weak but clear. When given no good choice, we make a new one. Sometimes it is a stupid one, but it is ours. A new alert sounded, softer this time. The engineer checked it. It was a long-range communication from the Dominion Command. They had detected the dreadnought's damage and the triggered integrity protocols. They were demanding a report. The engineer looked at the humans. Then it began to input data into the console. His fingers moved quickly. What are you doing? Taehyun asked, tension returning to his body. Filing the report, the engineer whispered. Finished and faced them. I have reported that an unknown, primitive vessel trespassed and performed a self-destructive attack before it could be deleted. The damage is contained. The debris field has been jettisoned. The incident is over. The humans stared. It was lying. They were the debris field, and they were very much not jettisoned. Why? Hanul asked. The engineer did not answer directly. Instead, it walked to a different part of the console and input another command. A smaller, secondary blast door hissed open on the far side of the chamber. It revealed a small, spare room with a bunk and a supply cabinet. Private quarters. You will remain here, contained. You are a specimen of illogical behavior, to be studied. It is more efficient than deletion, now that the immediate threat is neutralized. It was a thin story, but it was a story that let them live. The engineer turned to leave, moving towards a smaller personnel door they had not seen, paused at the threshold and looked back. Its eyes found the picture on the main screen one last time. Your method was wasteful, it said, but your persistence has data value. Do not touch the core controls. Then it was gone. The door sealed behind it. The four humans were alone in the humming heart of the warship. The warship that had given them 20 seconds to live. The warship they had crashed into. The warship that now secretly housed them. They were alive. They were prisoners. They were a secret. Su Yung sank to the floor, tears of relief and exhaustion finally coming. Minji slid down beside her, gently stretching her injured leg. Taehyun walked to the main screen and looked at the picture of his family. He touched the screen softly. Captain Lee Hanul looked at the swirling blue core. They had not won. The Mujigi was gone. They were lost. But they had done what they set out to do. They had not been quietly deleted. They had forced the giant to see them, not as a problem but as a puzzle. They had left a mark, not just on the hull but on the mind of their enemy. A mark in the shape of a family photo and a refusal to yield. The giant would carry that mark with it, across the stars. And inside its belly, the small, stubborn humans would live to see another day. The message had been sent. And against all odds, it had been received.